I'm the type of guy.
Whoa, little dub music there. Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. I know. Happy Saturday. Welcome to Coast College Football Pregame Show, episode 17, Rivalry Week, take 2. And it is already off to a crazy start. And we are going to go over all that this morning, everything that happened from yesterday. If you didn't watch the game, go back and watch it. That's all I can tell you.
True.
I'm your host, Bill Shawcross, Uncle Shally. Mr. Michigan, Mr. Defending National Champion for a couple more weeks at least. To my top left, my Buckeye brother from another mother, Mr. Ohio State, Mr. I hate his guts today, Mr. Cottrell Simpson. How are you, sir?
I'm feeling great. You know, it's a great Saturday. In about, let's see, 5 hours or so, the world will be back on its axis. From the past 5 years, we've seen some nonsense happen since the last time that the Buckeyes were kings of the castle.
They're called losses. But before we get started, and we do have a lot to go over today, coming from his apparent mansion in Oregon, in the upper right-hand corner, Mr. Grand Piano, Mr. I Black Elmore himself, Mr. West Coast, and still, uber fan of number one team, undefeated team, the only undefeated team in the country, Alex Elmore. How are you, sir?
I love hearing you say that, Bill. The only undefeated team. And yes, this is my mansion. Thank you for having me. The world's smallest violin is on the way, which is what Cottrell plays every time he talks about Oregon and Ohio State being on a collision course. I'm excited to be here, and I'm hoping that no punches are held back today, because I've been in the forefront of the rivalry games. I played Michigan, I played Ohio State. Now it's time for y'all to face off, and I want nothing held back today. But I want to hear how you really feel, Trell. I want to hear how you really feel. This is gonna be a great episode, and I get to sit back.
Bill, so the thing is with Alex is the thing is with Alex, he's still in his glory days. It's November still. You know, this is like last month that he gets to really be happy, because he knows that, you know, once the weather really starts to get cold, it turns into December, the new year happens, January happens, you know, those zeros turn into ones, they turn into twos, and then his team's back at home in Oregon watching the rest of the country play football. So he's getting it in while he can, and I understand it and I respect it. But, you know, it's getting later in that year where you won't be able to hear much from Alex the rest of the way.
Weather is getting colder, but where are we going to have to play that's cold? Because after our first round bye, all of the bowl games are in freaking warm weather.
It's not about playing somewhere that's cold. I'm just talking about this is the season. You know, the winter time is when Oregon starts to shrink up and go back in the house, because it's too late in the year for them.
And you're going to have one more big game left to make sure you don't play anywhere cold. So don't be counting your chickens quite yet. But
we're already 100% into the football playoff. But you're right.
That being said, we got to get going, because number one, we're going to do break the huddle as always, rankings. We have recaps. We have recaps from last week, and we have to recap, you know, at least touch on a couple games from last night. Ton of preview, you know, rivalry games to get into. Eliminator has changed, and we got to get into pick 'em. We got to do all that by 12 o'clock. So we do got to get rolling here. First off, everybody that's listening, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. I hope everybody ate a bunch of great food, and you're still stuffed and ready to go. But, you know, we're back out in the practice field getting ready. So we're going to get going. Alex, as always, breaking the huddle. We're starting with you. Let's roll.
Shotgun. DC right. Flip 90 dig. On the center. Ready?
All right, welcome. Don't usually like to throw anything sad into the news, but I feel like this is something that needed to be addressed. Alabama A&M Bulldog football player Medrick Burnett Jr. He did unfortunately pass away on Wednesday from a head injury suffered during a game in October against Alabama State. The school did announce initially Wednesday morning that he had passed before retracting that statement, as the immediate family did not want the information released right away. But it has officially been released that he did unfortunately pass away from his injuries. And this is just kind of an example of, earlier in the season, I talked about the Guardian caps and how I thought that they were an important piece that should be implemented going forward. And, I don't like to use anybody's tragedy for a stepping stone for this, but I think this is kind of a prime example of why I believe that. Any kind of opinions on your guys' end? Obviously, besides being extremely sad, obviously he was a first-year player for Alabama A&M. Any kind of opinions on your guys' end as far as this sad incident?
I mean, it's definitely sad. I mean, it's tragic. I mean, anytime anybody dies on from a sporting injury, be football, the rare occurrences that happens in anything else, it's sad. I remember hearing this happen, and then I hadn't heard anything about it. And I kind of I thought that he was getting better. And then obviously the news broke the other day that unfortunately he had passed. So, listen, I don't, I think when people, when situations like this happen, I don't think this is necessarily the right time to get into discussions or debates about, safety rules and stuff like that. Because I think it should always happen before things like this happen. I don't like making people's deaths, politicized or anything like that. But listen, you're never going to get around the fact that football is just a violent game. It is. It's a violent contact sport. That's what it is. These kids are getting bigger and faster and stronger every year. You're seeing, these, you're talking about athletes that are, even if you're a lineman, you're a 6'5", 350-pound lineman that can probably run like a 4.6, 4.7 40. And then you have linebackers that look like professional wrestlers that can run, can chase down running backs and run through the line full speed and hit you in the chest. Like you are talking about premier athletes across the board at every position running into each other at full speed. That's what they're doing. When you break it down, just, it's bare minimum. Again, I feel terrible for his family because you look at it like this is something that happens once, I don't know, every couple years. And it's like you look at all the kids that play football and you have to look at it like, why was my son the one? You know what I mean? It's like, how did he get hit in that perfect spot that this is where we're at? I think it's going to be a couple years before we really get information back on Guardian caps and what they limit and what they reduce and how much they reduce impact to the head. I will say this. I think if that information and data, when it comes back, I think if it's overwhelming, I think I wouldn't be surprised if certain conferences or certain situations require the kids to start wearing them. I don't think you'll ever be able to do that in the NFL because those guys are all technically considered, contractors and like their own. I just don't think the NFL would ever get that through the NFLPA, but I could see it in college. I could see it in college making the kids wear them if the data is that overwhelming.
I think for me, the biggest piece here is that, obviously it's a sad occurrence and, you don't want to use people's deaths to push agendas or things like that. But I mean, the way that college football is, we've seen a history in the past of really that being the case. I mean, you talk about the situation that happened at Maryland, a few years back where, the kid was having a cardiac arrest on the field or whatever during practice, and coaches were going too hard on him. And, you had kids passing out from heat strokes or, passing away from those heat strokes and things like that. And you saw a change in how schools were essentially conducting practice and how hard they were being on certain kids. Now, of course, you still have your stern coaches who are going to be that way, but it's definitely brought forth a different level of attention to the sport. So I think that, in this case, in this tragedy here, you you have empathy for like his family, but at the same time, like it's from like the college football standpoint here, you think about how can you make sure that this doesn't happen again, or because like Bill said, this is something that's extremely rare. You don't hear about this kind of stuff happening, which is why this is such big news. But I think when this happens, even at the FCS level here, you start to look at how can we make sure that this isn't something that happens again. So not only is it a tragic situation, but this is also, a sad reality of the sport that you're in, with it being as violent as it is. And we keep hearing pretty much every other year where the NCAA or the NFL, they're trying to make these rules to improve player safety. I mean, we talk about how awful targeting is. Well, part of the reason why that rule is in place is to try at least to prevent that helmet to helmet contact where, stuff like this and, just awful things happen that way. So, I mean, I think this will be something that the NCAA will be able to potentially look at to see what they can do to make sure stuff like this doesn't happen again. But altogether, it's just a tragic situation all around.
Yeah, so I definitely don't want to use it to platform into anything. So I definitely want to talk about guarding cats later on before the college football season is over. I'd like to take some time to talk about it, but I definitely feel like this young man deserved to be recognized on our show. And my thoughts and prayers go out to his family. But onto a little bit. Oh, actually, this news is also kind of sad because I grew up with Mack Brown at Texas, and Mack Brown is out at North Carolina. He's still coaching this weekend, but he will be out after the season in North Carolina. Do you think Mack Brown retires, or do you think there's going to be another stop on his road?
I think this is it for Mack. I think Mack, I think he put a huge jolt of energy into that program, which is what they needed. I just don't think he was able to sustain it. Recruited really well offensively, defensively. It just he wasn't bringing the kids in. How many games have we seen, UNC lose 45-42 the last couple of years? That first year he came in like fire. Obviously he had Drake May and inherited a really good roster, but took them from a 7-win team to a 10-win team. And they were in the discussion for the college football playoff for most of the season. Great coach. I think he got a raw deal at Texas when they let him go. Always liked Mack Brown. So it'll be sad to see him, kind of bow out and probably be done here. Like I said, I can't see him going to a smaller school or anything like that. And I don't think any big school is probably going to hand their program over to him because of his age and stuff like that at this point. So today's game is probably the end of the road for him. Great coach. Had a lot of success at Texas. But 10 wins a year there, just don't cut it if you're not competing for national championships. Ultimately, we've got, what got him let go. Great guy, though. I remember he was on ESPN for a couple of years before he went back to UNC. Obviously knows the game. Definitely one of those guys that absolutely cares about all his players, which is great. So, like I said, it's kind of sad news as well. It's because, like you said, I grew up with Mack Brown. I liked him. It's definitely an end of an era, most likely for him. So, wish him well. I guess I hope he goes back on TV because I loved him. I loved him on ESPN.
For me, I mean, I think it's really about what he wants to do. Bill, you said you don't think he goes back to a smaller school. I wouldn't either. I mean, he's 73 years old at this point. So, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to rebuild a program because, I mean, we know how taxing it is to recruit, travel across the country to talk to kids and things like that. And, I'm sure he's moving around fine and things like that. But, I mean, at a certain point, I mean, he's really got nothing left to prove to the game. Like, he's given it everything he's had. He's a national champion. He's won conference championships. I mean, he's coached literally at the highest level there. So, I mean, there's nothing really left for him to prove. I think if he still wants to be around the game, I think there are probably a short list of teams that wouldn't allow him to come in and be a senior advisor or something like that. If he still wants to be around the game and still implement wisdom, in some of these younger players, I think he could go to pretty much any school in the country and do so. But with that said, it is an end of an era per se. Specifically, remember that national championship that he won with Vince Young as his quarterback there. So Mac's been successful pretty much everywhere he's been, even going to Carolina. You know, they were never in a position to truly win a national championship per se, but having Drake May being a threat to for that ACC championship, you know, year in and year out with May being there, I think it's important. So Mac, it's definitely sad news, but probably the right decision moving forward for North Carolina, because you only have so much of a ceiling with Mac Brown as your head coach, especially at this age.
Yeah, I mean, he retires with an overall record of 288 wins, 154 losses, and 1 tie. 113 and 78-1 at North Carolina alone. So ending it with a winning record there. And then like you guys already alluded to, 2005 national championship. That's one of the all-time classic games against USC. Probably, I'd say, one of the top 10 college football games. Okay, that's top for another story, but another time. But I think that's my top 10 greatest college football games of all time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But no, Mac Brown, great coach. I'm glad he's 73 years old. I think you're right. I think both of you guys are right. Or I think if anything, he goes into an advisory role. Kind of like Mike Bellotti when he retired from coaching at the University of Oregon. He stepped into an athletic director type role. I'm not saying Mac Brown goes athletic director, but I think he might stay around football for a little bit, just doing something a little bit off books. Next up, and this one kind of surprised me a little bit. Travis Hunter or Deion Sanders came out and said that Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders will be playing in the bowl game if they do not go to the Big 12 championship and the college football playoff. That those two star players will still be playing in the bowl game. That the seniors want to go out the right way. That they've earned the right to do this, and the fans deserve to see these guys play one more time. The reason why this surprises me, and I'll let you guys kind of get into this. Just want to give my little 2 cents. Is we just watched Shedeur Sanders take a nasty hit last week against Kansas. Knee level, honestly, could have ended his season. And I feel like when you see something like that, I feel like that's kind of like a wake-up call. That's like, okay, cool. Next year, you're going to be a pro. This injury could happen. Do you feel like playing in a bowl game for Shedeur and Travis is kind of a good idea, or do you think that's something that maybe they should rethink?
I don't necessarily think it's a good idea or a bad idea. I think both of them have, and I think also situations have determined this as well, but both of them have put it out there that Travis Hunter is the best player in the country, whatever way you slice it. Best player in the country that's coming out next year. So injury or not, if you don't want to take that risk on Travis, like for me, and you know, knock on wood, because I don't want it to happen, but like Travis Hunter could tear his ACL in his next game. And me personally, if I'm a team that already has my franchise quarterback, I'd still be comfortable drafting him number 1 overall. Like that's how I feel about him at this point, like how strongly I feel about his talents. And then for Shedeur, I mean, the way that everything has played out this season, to me, I think it's clear cut that he's the best quarterback in this upcoming class. You know, before the year, there were arguments about Carson Beck, who we've seen struggle a bit this year. Other guys in the class are going to be Jalen Milroe and Cam Ward. And depending on what you're looking for, I understand play style. Quinn Ewers is another one as well, but he's even kind of fallen off like that top quarterback trajectory there. And I think with Shedeur, he's basically come on and shown you that unless you want a more athletic quarterback and like Cam Ward or Milroe, from just a pure pocket standpoint, he's the best quarterback in the class as well. So I think these two are in unique situations where it's one thing if you're like okay, I think you're going to be a top 10 pick this year. I just don't know where you're going to fall, as opposed to these two. And it's like, hey, depending on team situation, you're going to go 1, you're going to go 2, or you're going to go 2 and you're going to go 1. Like I could see Travis Hunter going number 1. I can also see Shedeur going number 1, depending on who needs what, you know, in that top spot there. So I think these two are in unique situations as opposed to guys who are for sure top 10 picks, but just don't know exactly where. I think these two have really submitted themselves as the number 1 in each of their respective positions.
So do you think it's a good idea for them to play the bowl game?
For Travis, in my opinion, I think for Travis, it doesn't matter one way or another. I don't think even an injury, I don't think would affect his draft position. For Shedeur, I think it could. So if I'm, you know, just think about it logically here. If I'm the quarterback, I don't play for Travis. I don't think it matters what happens. Like I said, he can go out there, ACL, whatever injury possible happens. And I still think a team would take that chance on him because, one, we've seen everybody recovers from these injuries pretty much like they were before they left, unless it's like, you know, repeated Achilles injuries and things like that and age and stuff like that. So I think for Travis, it's a no-brainer. No matter what happens, he'd be fine. For Shedeur, I wouldn't play just because we know how important the quarterback position is in general.
I'm going to go opposite of him, actually, on this. If I'm Travis Hunter, there's no way I'm playing. I understand ACLs are more routine and, it's considered not a high risk or career-threatening injury anymore, but you never know. You never know. You never know. You get a Nick Chubb type injury or a Teddy Bridgewater. Anything like that could happen. It's not worth it. The kid's going. I agree. They're both going in the top 10. Travis Hunter is most likely going number 1. If they make the Big 12 championship game, obviously I'm playing in that. If not, I'm not playing it. I think situation always matters with these discussions now. With the amount of money that's on the line. If you're a late first round pick and you might be able to improve your stock, like kids like that, I think it's worth the risk of probably going out. If, to Cottrell's point, if you're the bona fide best, athlete in college football, you're playing both ways, which doubles the risk, actually, if you look at it that way, and you're probably going number 1, I'm not risking any of that status for a bowl game. I'm not. Shedeur, I think, is a little bit different. Not that you'd want him to endure any type of injury, but there's no guarantee where he gets drafted that he's starting next year. I think it's a little bit less risky for him if he got an ACL or something like that. I mean, he just sits there for a year and learns the offense and learns all that type of stuff anyway. It's not the end of the world for him. And he's a quarterback, so he's not as reliable as the explosiveness that Travis Hunter is. So I agree with Cottrell on the surface of a lot of it, but in regards to each of their specific situations, I'm just backwards. I'm reverse from Cottrell.
Yeah, as far as when I look at this, obviously if they make the Big 12 championship, no brainer. They make the college football playoff, no brainer. But, if they're playing in some, the Barstool Sports Bowl, I don't know how you could honestly be like, yeah, let's go out there against Toledo. And not that they're going to play Toledo, but let's just go out there against Toledo and, risk you getting injury. I think if it's a big time bowl where like Alabama misses the college football playoff, so does Colorado, and the bowl committee says, you know what, Alabama, Colorado, let's get them to play each other. That's a big matchup. I think that's a situation where Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, I would play. I don't think I would go out and risk it to play against some lower end school, but that's just me. But Justin, you're right. Selfishly, I love that they're playing as well, because last year we had a huge conversation about star players sitting out and if we agreed or didn't agree. And it's so weird because when it comes to these two, I almost feel like protective. Like, no, don't hurt these two, but everyone else needs to play their bowl games that are seniors. So it's weird how like we've kind of like adopted these two as like our children in college football. Like we feel for Travis Hunter, we feel for Shedeur Sanders. We want the best for them. So it's kind of funny how that kind of came about.
I think the one thing with Colorado as well, I mean, I think maybe they start to set a precedent there. Maybe that's how Deion is kind of going to get that edge and, really appeal to recruits and their parents, talking about, hey, we try to do things the right way here. If you start something, I want you to finish it this way. Maybe you just have to like try and instill that into your program there. And maybe that's how you get kids to buy in and potentially not hit the portal and things like that. So I think it's a culture thing that, hey, even these two, my star guys, they aren't too good to play in this bowl game here. Another part of it is that I know for a fact that Deion Sanders has talked to Travis's parents, and of course him as, Shedeur's dad. They have insurance policies on these guys already. So even if injuries do happen and, they slip from 1 down to 10, they probably already have like $2 million, $5 million insurance policy on these guys based on injuries as well. Not saying that would make it better if they get hurt or anything like that, but I do think they are covering their bases, especially from Deion knowing how the game works and things like that. Other thing that I'll say is that if Colorado doesn't make the college football playoff, you can almost guarantee that someone's going to pick them up for one of those New Year. And again, I know they don't have the same allure, but someone's going to pick up Colorado to play in the New Year's Six game, and it'll be against a big time program because that's going to drive ratings to ESPN. So whether it be the Alabama or whatever SEC school gets left out, you're going to see Colorado most likely playing them to really see how they would have stacked up per se in that college football.
Colorado, let's go.
I also think it's easy to say that they're playing now too. And I think a lot's going to change in the next couple of weeks. I'm not saying they don't play, but at that point, they're both, once this is over, they're both going to hire agents, and there's going to be a lot of other discussions, a lot of other things that happen, because the committees that are picking these games aren't going to be able to, make kids play. So the last thing you want to see is a Colorado versus an Alabama game, but no Travis Hunter, no Shedeur Sanders, no Jalen Milroe, because that's a possibility of happening, and that's a byproduct of the college football playoff being bigger, and we all get it and we all love it, but that is part of what we're going to sacrifice for this. We started seeing this trend a couple years ago with big kids not playing in bowl games if it wasn't a major bowl game. I don't think that's going to change this year. It'll be interesting to see.
I will say this: Georgia did it the right way last year when they didn't make the playoff. And granted, they beat the snot out of Florida State. I think that was more so just to prove a point. They felt like they should have been in. But you've seen in the past before, Nick Saban has even come out and said, hey, my guys are playing. You saw Jaden Daniels when he was literally going to, be a top 2 pick in the draft. He came out, he played. Malik Neighbors played. Brian Thomas played. So, yeah, you get your situations where a lot of the stars do sit out those games, but you also, on the flip side of it, do get situations where a lot of the stars are like, hey, I want to go out the right way and, in my career on a high note. So, I think for Deion to come out and say this already, there's not one agent on this planet that can change Deion's mind about how he feels about this. If it's an agent that comes in and he says, hey, Travis and Shedeur, they shouldn't be playing this game. He's like, all right, well, you're not the right agent for these guys because I know what's in their best interest here. So I don't think there's going to be an agent that necessarily goes against Deion's wishes there. And I think if Deion already came out and said it, there is no other discussions to be had because Deion doesn't strike against a guy that changes his mind, easily.
I think Deion could say that for Shedeur. Travis is engaged, has a baby on the way. I think Travis is going to make his own decision at some point too. And again, I think Travis going number 1. I guess there's a chance Shedeur goes number 1. So I'm not going to say there's no shot because again, if the
Giants or one of those teams get number 1, you got to get a quarterback.
If you're going pocket, then he's probably the guy you're taking. To your point, but not saying it's not going to happen. But again, I'm just saying it's easy to say now when you're still in the thick of it, and everybody's playing and. We still got games left. We're still going to, hopefully we make the Big 12 championship game. A lot of adrenaline, a lot of, bravado still going on. I think it's a little bit different when, like I said, you sit down and have the real discussions, if things don't go their way today and they're officially out, then it's like, all right, well, we're not playing for a month now. There's going to be a lot of going home. They're going to go home for a week or two before they come back to campus and, for Christmas time. And there's going to be a lot of discussion. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying Deion is lying right now either. They might have all sat down and said, hey, we're going to play. But like I said, when things go home and things, people have conversations with family and everything else, it can change. So Travis is obviously going to hire. I guarantee he's going to have a big name agent. So
probably the same agent as Shedeur.
We'll see. Again, I think at some point Travis is going to start making his own decisions too. I don't think Deion is the end all be all for Travis either. So
I'm not saying end all be all, but I do think if you just based on their story, Travis trusted Deion to go, and his family trusted Deion to go all the way to Jackson State, bypass Florida State, who was at the time, still one of the top programs in college football, just brand standpoint. You do that, and then you go to Jackson State. He ultimately leaves. You go to Colorado. Every step of the way, they've trusted Deion throughout the process there. I do think Travis will ultimately, go his own way at some point, but I do think Deion will be influencing a lot of that direction for whatever path he does take.
I obviously think Travis is going to ask for his opinion, but like I said, I think Travis is going to be the person making the decision at the end for all of this. Where he feels comfortable, what he feels comfortable doing. You only get a chance to go number 1 once in your life. So, again, I hope they play. I've always been on the side of, finish the year with your team and go out. Especially, knowing these kids aren't coming back for their last year. So. I've always been on that side, but I mean, it's the last couple of years. You've had to at least be honest about what situation we're really in now with money and everything else, with the way college football is starting to change. So I think you have to take it case by case. So I hope they play. I hope everything that Deion said is true. I really do hope that's the way this all plays out. I just don't want to see them get hurt, because as soon as not that it could be those two, but if Jalen Milroe is like, yeah, I want to go out and finish, and as soon as one of those kids gets hurt, you automatically go on like a 3 or 4 year thing where none of them are going to play. Yep. Don't be Jalen Milroe. Don't be Travis Hunter. Don't be stupid. Because as soon as one of them gets hurt, and ultimately it will happen, you automatically, everybody else shuts it down for like a 3 or 4 year span.
Speaking of shutting it down, we do have some breaking news here. Will Johnson and Colston Loveland are both out today. Officially got ruled out. I know we got to move here to our recaps from last week, but just some news that broke there, and felt like it was important to share that.
One of them annoys the hell out of me, and one of them does not, because I think one's legit.
We can talk about the other one. We can talk about the other. We can talk about those later. I just wanted to get them out there. We're talking headlines.
I told you Wednesday the one wasn't going to play. So
yeah, I mean we knew that for sure.
Well, before we get on to recaps, we have one more piece of news that dropped this morning at around 3:11 in the morning. It did not make the headlines, but it is a headline on ESPN, and that is that Stanford is bringing back ex-quarterback Andrew Luck as the new general manager of the football team. They created this role, and it's not a role that exists anywhere else in college football, at least. And they think that this could be a position that other teams start to implement. There's not a lot of details out yet from what I'm seeing, but Andrew Luck is back in the college ranks, going to help with some recruiting aspects and getting the football team kind of back around, as they've had 5 losing seasons in the last 6. It's always good to see Andrew Luck around football, but anything you guys want to add on? I know it's kind of new news.
For me, the biggest thing was I saw this, and I texted you guys about it. I knew it dropped pretty early this morning here, so I texted you guys about it. And I think the most interesting part from what I've read about it is that, like you said, Alex, this is a position that really doesn't exist. Like, there's GM roles and director of player personnel, things like that around these college campuses, but they basically came out and said that, hey, he's going to be the GM, and he's going to have full, essentially, control of the entire football program there. So the title GM typically doesn't mean that, but for Andrew Luck it does. And so I think this is how you bring back talent to Stanford. Christian McCaffrey, Andrew Luck, like you've seen Toby Gerhart when he was there. Like, Stanford has had tons of talented guys like in the past, and I think bringing in a guy like Andrew Luck will help you, one, from a football standpoint, getting guys who are legit football players, because he can help evaluate those guys and go about recruiting them. But also, I think it's important to have a face like that to your program that's within that program, because that'll appeal to a lot of families that are looking to, have their kids potentially go to the NFL, but also who are looking for one of the top educations in the entire country. So, I mean, I think bringing in Andrew Luck was a phenomenal move for them. Giving him full control makes a ton of sense as well, because we know how great of a football mind Andrew is.
Yeah, I'm going to be short here. I love it. And Cottrell hit on the big thing for me is you're not bringing in an outside guy from that was an assistant GM from, say, Ohio State. Andrew Luck's a Stanford guy, went there, understands it, understands, that you can go there. And, again, it is not easy to get into Stanford. It's a top 10 school in the country. The academic standards to get in are hard enough. They don't give it out really athletic scholarships because it's an Ivy League school. But he understands all that. He understands how to sell it to a family. And then on top of that, he is able to sit there and show, hey, you can come here, get a great education, and still go to the NFL and be one of the best players in the NFL. And obviously, you look at it right now, if Andrew Luck was still playing, he'd be a top 5 quarterback, no doubt. And then you look at C-Mac, who also went there, like Cottrell mentioned, he's still the best running back in the NFL. They have success stories. Them bringing somebody back in that's homegrown and that can show them that entire process from start to finish is huge for them. So great move for Stanford. I've always liked Andrew Luck, always. I don't know if you guys ever followed him on Twitter or anything, but like he used to, after his games and everything, he would write like the letters like he was like an old soldier, like to his mom, and it was one of the funniest things ever. Really enjoy him. I think it's a great move. And to both of your points, I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this changes. Do other schools jump on this? Because like you said, I think most times people hear GM and they're like, all right, like they're in charge of players. There's usually a director of football operations as well. Some teams, some teams have one guy that does both. But in college, I think we're kind of breaking new ground here. It's kind of a new position. So I think if he's very successful with it, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how other schools look at this and go, hey, like maybe like, we need to hop on this as well. So, but overall, just an absolute brilliant move from Stanford.
Yeah, and that's breaking the huddle this week. I had a little bit of extra news on there for you, but that wraps us up this week, guys.
All right, we're going to move quick because here we go. All right, we're a little bit behind. So we're going to start with the easy one. It's the quickest one here. All right, we're going to start Notre Dame versus Army, 49-14. I'm going to get Alex's flowers out of the way right now so I don't have to hear him bragging over in Oregon, saying how it was going to be the same as the Navy game, because it was almost like time to go to the Navy game. I did not think it was going to be. I know Cottrell didn't either. But I don't want to say Notre Dame's flying under the radar. They really haven't played anybody. But that being said, it's going to be another ranked win. And they got a tough roadie at USC today, but they dominated. They came out and took care of business like they had to, got the win. Like I said, they move on to USC today, which I think is a tricky one to finish their season up. Last statement they can make to the College Football Playoff Committee because they do not have a conference championship game because they're cowards. Sorry. I gotta stop saying stuff out loud. Thoughts, quick guys. Let's get through Notre Dame Army quick here. Alex, I'll let you go first on this one so you can brag, but make it quick.
Here's man. Here's what I must say. Army Navy, fantastic seasons. Unfortunately, the type of military shape that they have to stay in, they can't really compete with some of these bigger, higher priority schools like Notre Dame, even like team schools like USC, Oregon. So they had a fantastic season. Unfortunately, this is exactly how I thought it was going to go. And I think they're going to have a great chance at winning the AAC championship this year, which is fantastic for them as well. Great for the program. But it's exactly how I thought it would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't have really much to say here. I mean, would have been nice to see Army stick into it, because the crazy thing is that this wasn't, I mean, score wise and how it all happened, this wasn't the exact same way that it happened with Navy. Like, Army took care of the ball, they were able to run the ball, and they just couldn't score. Like, this game was nuts. I mean, give credit to Notre Dame, like they never faltered with that, and I'm not going to say this game made me a believer in Notre Dame, but I do think Notre Dame is playing a different level of football right now than even what I saw, earlier in the year from them. Like, I think Notre Dame is playing good they're actually playing good football right now. I don't think it's sustainable. I still don't think they're one of my picks to even be a threat for a national championship this year, but I will say I do like what I'm seeing in general from the Notre Dame football team.
I agree. And I'm gonna say one thing real quick before we move on to Indiana, Ohio State, because that's the other game that went exactly how I told you it was going to go. 3 Notre Dame fans texted me last night. You guys are just absolute idiots. See, we beat this Georgia Tech team. Don't tell me Notre Dame can't win a national championship with Georgia sitting there struggling with them. 2 points here. Number one, Georgia shouldn't have struggled with them. Number two, Georgia Tech's quarterback did not play when you guys beat them 31-13. Stop saying it's the same thing. The kid had 500 yards of offense and 5 touchdowns last night. Beat up, played like an absolute warrior. He didn't play against you guys, and you guys won 31-13, and that was with a late touchdown. So, again, you guys are like the Duke of college basketball. You win one game, and it's we're national championship bound now, because we beat a team with their backup quarterback 2 months ago. You guys are idiots. Next game.
Where are we going,
Ohio State, Indiana, to get back onto the I told you so train here before we get in the other 2 games. I'm just going to keep it short. For the second week in a row, They are who I told you they are, and that's what they are. They are a good football team. They are not elite. If they play any elite football team, they are going to lose. They've now played two. Hate to say it, Michigan still has like a top 12 defense. They've played 2 in a row. Their offensive point production, and this one was 7, mind you, with like a minute and a half to go. They were held to 7 points by Ohio State. Cut in half, offensive yards per game, cut in half, yards per play, cut in half. They're not playing Charlotte anymore. They're not playing Western Carolina. They're not playing any of these teams. Everything is cut in half when they play real teams. You want to keep them in the playoff? Go ahead, do it at your own risk. They're going to play somebody as a 10 seed, and they're going to get smoked. They are not an elite team. They're a very good team. They're a great story. It's a great story. I think they have a great head coach there now that wants to stay there and make that team into a perennial 7, 8, 9 win team, which is great for Indiana. They have great fans. It's a great school. They are not an elite football team. Stop saying they are. Ohio State wiped the floor with them, just like I told you was going to happen. This was 31-7 with a minute and a half to go. This wasn't a competitive football game. Ohio State, I hate talking about Ohio State like this. Ohio State was superior everywhere. Everywhere. Indiana was slower. They don't have the people to make the plays. Like I said, when they play defenses that have athletes that can run around and run stride for them, they look very ordinary. Happened 2 weeks in a row. It's going to happen again in the college football playoff. I'm done. Cottrell, you can go.
So I think that we're underselling a couple things here. One, Ohio State isn't your 7 through 12 seed. Like, I know we're going to get to them very soon here because they're one of the games that's up here, and we're talking about Georgia and Georgia Tech. But again, for me, I think Ohio State showed you that they came to play, and they were up for this task. Like, they were very focused. I also think Ohio State's one of the elite teams in the country, of course. But with that said, Indiana's first tough game, of the season, like first truly tough game of the season, they got to go on the road to number 2 Ohio State. And yes, they got blew out. Yes, the game wasn't close. But I look at it like this. They had 2 awful special teams plays, and I get it. This is a full slate, full aspect that we're looking at here in terms of the evaluation of the game. But you have 2 special teams blunders that happen, and it's still, even without those two mistakes, essentially 14 points there, game still very much out of hand. With that said, I know what I have seen from everyone in the country, not named Oregon and Ohio State. Like, every team in the country is beatable at this point. You look at how Tennessee looks against certain teams. You look at, teams the outside looking in, like Alabama, Ole Miss, hell, Georgia last night. None of these teams are dominant in every single football game. And for me to just act like this Indiana team is awful because they faced an Ohio State team that blew them out, like, that doesn't necessarily, like, it doesn't scream that to me. You just said if they face anybody, like, in the college football playoffs,
I said they're not elite. I said they're not elite. I never said they were awful. I said they're a very good football team.
You said they're going to.
They are.
That's not what's going to happen, though. Like, okay. I get it.
You said it wasn't going to happen against Michigan. You said it wasn't going to happen against you guys, and here we are.
I said I thought they would lose by, it was going to be a 2-possession game. How they're going to lose, and I know it was more than that. It was 3 possession game. Again, not everyone is Ohio State, and even looking at it from a defensive standpoint, not everyone has even Michigan's defense. Not everybody has Ohio State's defense. You look at these teams from 6 down. Notre Dame doesn't. I mean, Notre Dame has a good defense. They don't have the same caliber as Michigan or Ohio State. You look at Georgia. Georgia sometimes has a good defense, depending on which day it shows up. But then they give up 42 against Georgia Tech. Like, I look at Tennessee. I look at some of these other schools, even at SMU. Like, I just think it's crazy to just act like Indiana can't compete with a whole lot of these schools that are within that top 12 just because of a big loss to Ohio State.
It's not just that's the problem. It's not just a big loss to Ohio State. They couldn't compete with an average Michigan team who has good athletes on the field. If Michigan had a quarterback, Michigan wins that game by 13 points.
Okay, but my thing is that we've seen this happen literally in every single conference. Tennessee looked like that against Arkansas. Alabama looked like that against Oklahoma. BYU, they lost a football game to Kansas. Like we see that happen literally Oregon looked like that against Wisconsin. Yes, they won, but they look bad against Wisconsin. It happens in every single conference. There's going to be games where you don't look your best. You can't just say that they're not able to play good football.
I can when the only two competent teams they've played, they looked horrible. We've seen what Oregon looks like because Oregon beat Ohio State. We know what Oregon's ceiling is. They played nobody up until week 12 when they played Michigan. So unless you're telling me it's a coincidence that 2 weeks in a row they played decent football teams and they look like dog shit in both of them, and now next week or 2 weeks from now we're getting the college football playoff and they're just going to go on the road and stomp Notre Dame or something, I don't buy it, dude. Like, I know, like, again, Oregon can go on the road to Wisconsin, which is hostile and look bad, but I know what Oregon is. I've seen Oregon already beat an elite football team in Ohio State. I've already seen that. I know what Oregon is. I know what Ohio State is. I know what Ohio State looked like against Oregon. I've seen Ohio State beat Penn State. I know what those teams are. Indiana literally played nobody. Played a good, let's say a good average Michigan team. Looked horrible. Rebound from that the next week, go to Ohio State, gets their asses kicked. They were never in that game. That game was over at halftime. And now you're going to tell me they're going to go on the road and beat Notre Dame? They're not. Notre Dame will kill them. And I don't think Notre Dame's that good. Notre Dame playing that defense. That type.
Pause. I haven't said shit yet.
We can move on from this.
I haven't said anything about this game. I haven't said anything about this game yet, Bill. So
we need you.
I've been listening to y'all too.
Go ahead.
You look at the Ohio State-Indiana game, 38-15. That looks like a blowout. That is literally Indiana could not put all three phases together. Special teams is what lost them that game. Ohio State only had one touchdown drive over 44 yards. The other touchdown drives, I'm just saying that if they clean that section up, this is a lot closer game. Just like you said, Indiana they didn't have their best game against Ohio State. They still converted better on third down than they did. Converted better on fourth down than they did. They controlled they controlled the clock very well. They each had Ohio State had the ball 29 minutes, Indiana 30 minutes. If you look at just the intangibles, Indiana can be very competitive with Ohio State, but they got to clean up the special team side of the ball. You can't give up 4 touchdowns in your own territory. That's going to spell a loss every single day of the week. So when you say they can't compete with teams like Notre Dame, well, guess what? Notre Dame doesn't have the aerial attack that Ohio State does. Notre Dame is going to be running the ball a lot more. Indiana's run defense is one of the better defensive parts of their game. They held Ohio State to 4 yards per carry, and they have 2 of the best backs in the country. Notre Dame is going to be a run-happy offense against an Indiana team. That Indiana, I think, can keep up with that offense. This has got to be the best defense probably Notre Dame's played since Texas A&M. I mean, this is going to be, like I said, you say this Indiana thing because they left a bad taste in your mouth after the Michigan game and after this game, but I'll tell you right now, Bill, this is not an Indiana team that we're used to seeing. Yes, Ohio State absolutely annihilated.
They're better than what Indiana normally is. I've said that.
Yes, but here's the thing: Indiana is going to make a game. There are 3 teams.
Words in my mouth.
Oh my God! I never put words in your mouth, Bill. I never said anything. You said they're not elite.
You want to know why they're better on third down? Because Ohio State was up by 30 or 24 in the second half, and when it was 3rd and 7, Ryan Day did the smart thing and ran the football. You're not going to convert 3rd and 7s running the ball all the time. True or false? Happened three possessions in a row. Why? Because he took 4 minutes off the clock at a clip. And go back to your time of possession. You want to know why it was equal? Because Ohio State was efficient. And like you said, they didn't give up any 40-yard bombs because they outplayed them on special teams and they got the ball on Indiana's side of the field every time. So yeah, Will Howard's not going to throw a 60-yard bomb if he's starting at the 40. So yeah,
I'm just looking at the rankings here as a whole. 5 through 12 being Notre Dame, Miami, Georgia, Tennessee, SMU.
SMU rolls them.
Boise State and Clemson. Like, Indiana can beat every single team I just named. I'm not saying they would, but they can. They have the ability to beat every single one of them.
Has the ability to destroy them.
Well,
Nico shows up for Tennessee. Tennessee could beat them by 20. Clemson absolutely can. SMU, I think, will if they get them. Miami, if you get good Miami, Cam Ward, they destroy them.
If you get good Miami, that's like saying if you get good Indiana. Like, what?
Exactly. So if you get bad Miami versus bad Indiana, who's going to win?
Indiana.
Oh, my God.
Defense wins championships, and I trust Indiana's defense over Miami's.
Yeah,
any day of the week.
They haven't stopped a good football team yet.
Miami can't stop bad football teams. So,
Indiana, all Indiana does is beat bad football teams. They haven't beat a good football team yet.
Where are we going next?
Let's move on. BYU, Arizona State, which was a crazy ending. Arizona State was in control of this game for about almost 3 full quarters. BYU started to find their pass offense in the second half. Started scoring. Defense got some stops. And then we had one of the craziest series. Did you guys watch this game?
Yep.
Okay. What Arizona State's coach was doing in that last series of trying to run out the clock almost became one of the biggest blunders I've ever seen. Poor clock management, even worse play calling. The short version is Arizona State's quarterback lost about 20 yards on third down on a sack, left 7 seconds left on the clock, goes over, gets the play. Coach says run around for a couple seconds, and then just throw the ball as high as you can and run out the clock. He does that. They review it. The ball comes down clearly with 1 second to go. The fans have already stormed the field. They had one of the goalposts down. They now have to clear the field, put the goalpost back up, and now BYU has the ball with 1 second to go from like the 50. They throw a Hail Mary. BYU actually catches the ball like on the 2, and that's how Arizona State wins. BYU really had a chance here they got a big road win here. I think this would have clinched them. We're going to get into scenarios in a little bit. It's still doing like AP algebra or calculus. There's so many moving parts. But Arizona State, huge win. If they are the simplest one. If they win today, they are in, I believe. Yep. Everything else is still up in the air. But I want you guys to both comment on the coaching decisions at the end, the wildness of it. Do you think BYU can rebound today? And just a brief, description of the game.
For me, I mean, I think the decision to run around was fine. You just don't have your quarterback do it. Give it to your give it to your running back. You get him to run around. One, he's faster, he's more elusive. He can spend more time. Like quarterback, especially taking off like right away. Like it looked goofy, like the way that it happened. So I'm a fan of running around and trying to waste that time. Like we've seen it happen in other games where ultimately that's what wins you the football game, by being smart there and just going out the back of the end zone. But for me, it just didn't make a ton of sense having your quarterback be the scramble guy. If you give it to your running back, I'm much more of a fan of it. But outside of that, though, I mean, I thought Arizona State played a great game. It was even crazier the fact the Hail Mary got caught. It was just short of the goal line there. But that was a classic, and it put Arizona State in a position to where, like you said, if they win, they get to go to the Big 12 championship game really out of nowhere, because they hadn't been in the talks at all for making the playoffs. So I think that is one of the crazier stories right now in college football.
I think the craziest thing is that Arizona State is not going to win anything, either Big 12 championship, college football playoff games, nothing. If they play if they play going forward as they did in the fourth quarter against BYU. BYU outscored Arizona State in the second half 20-7. Arizona State had that game in hand. The coach was honestly Arizona State's coach. Can't remember his name, and I like this guy. I think he's gonna be a great coach for years to come.
Kyle Billingham.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. He almost was coaching scared the second half. Like he was trying to take time off the clock, but he wasn't really trying to move the ball. He was just trying to the game over with. Just like you guys said, like he tried this stupid play where he chucks it a million miles in the sky, just try to run out the time. And again, BYU gets the ball with a second left. I mean, I'm not a fan of, I'm a fan of aggressive coaching. One thing with Kyle Shanahan with the Niners that really irritates me is late in games, he tends to take his foot off the gas. And I hate coaches that do that because then scores like this happen and opportunities for like BYU happens. So keep your foot on the gas in the next game, especially today against Arizona, because Arizona is going to come in today to kind of try to ruin your season. This is the best chance. Their season's over. So the best chance for them to have a successful season is to beat you and to keep you out of that Big 12 championship game. So be all gas today, no breaks, and you'll be just fine. And where to next?
All right.
We got to get into last night.
Yeah. Before we get into this, Boise State won yesterday as well, convincing. Genty, another just masterclass game. Practically didn't even play the second half.
Yes, he did.
But yeah, and he played like part of the third quarter. But
he had a big time run and got his numbers up in the third quarter. Like he played literally.
They took him out after that. He didn't do what Colorado did, is my point. But that being said,
I guess.
Okay, so we them and UNLV for the Mountain West Championship. So I mean, I guess UNLV's got to take care of business.
They got to win.
UNLV's got to win. UNLV's got to win tonight, but they should.
Against Nevada. Yeah.
Yeah, they should take care of that. So
and that was a great game. That was besides Oregon, that was Boise State's best game of the year. So I mean, that'll be a good matchup.
It'll be a neutral field. I wonder where that is. It's probably Vegas, I would assume.
Probably Vegas.
So it's gonna be like a home game for them. But
I'm pretty sure that the Mountain West Conference have like a 10-year agreement with the Allegiant Stadium for their championship. So
I thought they played their conference championship games at home.
Ooh, do that?
I think that's what it used to be until Allegiant Stadium got built.
Oh, I thought
last year
the Pac-12 was playing.
Yeah, last year we played Allegiant also.
Yeah, but it was UNLV though, so that was different. Like that was their home game. I think the Mountain West still plays theirs like home stadium.
We'll find out.
No, he's right. It'll be at Boise State.
Oh, crazy. Okay, well, never mind. That changes things then. I really like it.
That's why he's college control, because he knows.
That's why he knows. I really like neutral fields for conference championship games, but
I do too. I do too, actually. But
a lot of the smaller schools just don't do it. Like I know for sure the Sun Belt doesn't do it. They play it at whoever's the favorite, or not favorite, but like that.
Right. It costs a lot of money to put on a conference championship game at a neutral site, though. Like like the Big Ten has the money to rent, Lucas Oil Field or whatever it is now in Indianapolis. But like same thing with the Pac-12 last year, and they can afford to rent it. That's taking a lot of money out of a smaller conference, and you're not getting the return per se either. I mean, I don't think Allegiant Stadium sells out for BYU or for Boise State versus a random team.
That's also a big part, yeah.
Where I don't care what two teams make it to Indianapolis, that place is sold out. So, but that being said, they took care of business last night, so they will most likely get UNLV next week in Boise. Like I said, like Alex said, UNLV's got to play Nevada tonight. They show up, they should win that game. And that'll be one of the games we preview next week. But that being said, we have to get into this football game. It was wild. All three of us were awake watching it. It was crazy. Georgia 44, Georgia Tech 42, 8 overtime game, second longest game in the history of college football. It was wild. I really don't even know where to start. Georgia Tech had a lead, dominated honestly the first half, had a lead most of the game. Georgia finally started to kind of open the playbook up. I don't know why this is pattern with them. I feel like they just play conservative, and when they get behind, then they start throwing the ball vertically. They start throwing the ball downfield, and it opens people up. Got back into the game, tied the game, and then the overtimes were just goofy. There was, I think, 4 overtimes where neither one of them scored. I've gotten a lot of stuff about the officiating in this game, and all I can say is this. I don't want to take away from the game. I don't, because those kids literally killed themselves last night. Georgia Tech's quarterback, that kid.
Haynes King
is an absolute – that kid took a beating last night. He is a warrior. Georgia Tech should be lucky to have him. That kid earned, I think, a lot of fans and a lot of praise last night. I will say this: the officiating was spotty at best. There was a lot of calls, I think, that were made that shouldn't have been made, and then there was a couple just obviously blatant ones that were not called, and they just all happened to pretty much go in the favor of Georgia. There's a lot of people already screaming online about SEC bias, and of course they got their way. They had to make sure Georgia won. I don't want to talk about it because I don't want it to overshadow the game. But all I'll tell you is it played a factor in the game. There was a couple of missed calls that hurt Georgia Tech. But we're not going to get into conspiracy now. It's a different discussion for a different day. Georgia prevails, keeps their college football playoff hopes alive. If they lost this game last night, it was going to create a mess. I don't know how else to put it, because I don't think you could keep them in the top 12 come Tuesday, and then somehow they go to the SEC championship game and win. You have to put them back in. So it's, I don't know. You guys just jump in here and talk about the game, talk about the scenario. I knew it was good. I was going back and forth between this and something else, and I started getting texts from Cottrell about being chaos and everything, and then I just pretty much turned it on and watched the rest of it, and it was a great football game.
Cottrell, I got two things to say about this game before you say it. I'll be real quick. One, obviously fantastic game, as like Bill said, but one, the play calling. Like, Georgia Tech had the ball with 29 seconds left on their own 40-yard line. They actually got it into Georgia territory. Had a 4th and 1 call. And we were texting the group chat. It was very obvious what the call should have been. Haynes King, roll out, or QB sneak. Instead, he ran the ball 32 times last night, and on 4th and 1 with the game on the line, you're going to drop back for a pass. Like, how do you make that decision as a coach? Like, even if they know you're running the ball, you ran your quarterback 32 times for over 100 yards, and you're not going to put the ball in his hands to get that last 1 yard. And that essentially gets them a first down. They have 1 timeout left. They get the ball literally 8 more yards, and their kicker is in field goal range. So, like, this game was lost by Georgia Tech by way more than just penalty calls, unfortunately. Georgia was down by 2 scores. I mean, there was 17 points scored in the first half. 86 was the total overall. I mean, this second half was absolutely insane. Fourth quarter was insane. The fourth quarter started, and I was like, I feel like I should put money on Georgia right now, because that's just the way the game felt. And like, Georgia's never really truly out of it, especially in the fourth quarter. And if they're within striking distance, they're going to make it happen. But the second thing I want to say is Haynes King is 100% going in the transfer portal next year, and is 100% going to be one of the hottest commodities in the transfer portal. I'm just calling that now. I guarantee he's probably next year's Notre Dame quarterback. I'm just saying.
He probably is.
For me, I mean, you, Bill, you said you didn't want to talk about the conspiracy theory, but look, there was a lot of things in that game that I did not like. One of them being the 4th down pass interference call in the end zone. When one ball got tipped at the line of scrimmage, there shouldn't be PI called when the ball gets tipped at the line of scrimmage. But then 2, you look at it, and I mean, the defender has his arm around him, but you guys know every single show that we're on, I am always a fan of let the players play in that situation. That wasn't a clear and obvious hook or hold in that spot. You cannot call that penalty there. The play where Haynes King fumbled, the defender hits him with the crown of his helmet. I mean, it was like, I'm watching, I'm like, this has got to get reviewed for targeting. Like, I hate that, this would be a letter of the law call, but that's what this is here. Like, I've seen kids get thrown out for less than that. And
it's the definition of the rule.
With it being a turnover-worthy play, it should have got looked at, and it should have been flipped. Like, there's no way that you cannot call that targeting in that spot, because, like I said, I've seen players get sent out for worse. Bosa hit Lawrence like that in one of their games in the playoff game, and he got thrown out for that. Like, I've seen that exact play where it's a helmet to like the chest area, where it's not like a huge hit or a huge impact, but the fact that they didn't even go back to review that was absolutely insane to me. And then just to piggyback off that, it was driving me insane, because usually I'm a big, like, Jesse Palmer, Joe Tessitore, like, I love hearing those guys in the booth. after every single big play, hearing Joe say is if Georgia can find a way to pull off this game, they're going to be in the playoff, like no matter what. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, they're at 7 right now. And if they go out and, for example, if A&M wins today and they go out and lose to number 20 or number 18th ranked Texas A&M, I get it. They made it to their SEC championship game, but that shouldn't give you a bona fide spot in the college football playoff, depending on what happens the rest of the way. So
I agree with you because I just don't know how you would justify Georgia being over A&M at that point.
You couldn't, because they'd have the automatic spot there. But I think not even just that, though. It's like, why are you guys saying that it is a bona fide lock for Georgia to get in? Like, they're at 7. Like, it's one thing if they were at 3. Like, if it was Texas, they beat A&M today, and like even if they lose the SEC championship, they're in no matter what. But Georgia's sitting there at the 7th spot, and we know there's all type of chaos around us with this college football thing. And escaping with a 2-point win against Georgia Tech, that's 7-5 at this point. There's nothing in my mind that you can say, hey, they are a bona fide lock to get in the playoff because they won this football game, knowing that craziness can happen even in the SEC championship game.
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? And to go back to the targeting thing real quick, I remember watching it, and to Cottrell's point, we've absolutely all seen people get thrown out for less. But I promise you, like, that is a textbook like when they teach the referees in the offseason, like examples of targeting, that play will be on one. The guy literally comes through the line, lowers his helmet, and hits the quarterback between his chest and his chin. You see his head jolt back with the crown of the helmet. And the fact that it could come from the booth and be reviewed, and it didn't even happen after them reviewing the fumble. Like, they just looked at the fumble and they were like, oh, like, don't mind the fact that the quarterback's head almost got knocked off. Like, the fact that nobody caught it this is the stuff that makes people pissed off. That is the type of call being missed that goes, you know what? Now there's money on all these football games. That's why that's not getting called. And it's situations like this. Like, I don't want to believe that. I don't want to believe that the outcomes of these games are already predetermined. But it's shit like this when it happens, and it happens over and over. There's another play that happened in overtime when Georgia scored their 2-pointer. The tackle from Georgia Tech comes through the line and almost gets held by his face mask almost. No call. Like, how are you missing it? And Carson Beck rolled to that guy's side on that play to throw the football. Like, how in the hell, if you're the umpire sitting there watching the quarterback, how are you rolling to that side and watching that guy come through the line and get literally horse-collared, held, and you don't see it? Like, that's the type of stuff that makes people question the integrity of all this. And it's getting harder and harder to justify. It just is. Like,
we can't forget that in the 4th or 5th overtime, Georgia Tech didn't get the conversion. There was a penalty called on Georgia that gave them another opportunity at the 1.5 yard line. They still couldn't squeeze in. And that was Georgia had already had the ball and didn't score. That was Georgia Tech's opportunity to win the game. I even said in the group chat, I said they better run it here.
Said they better QB sneak it, and
exactly.
And got stuff.
It was bad. It was real bad.
But I mean, to your point though, at least that PI call, it was PI. Like, it wasn't like they were just like throwing Georgia Tech a bone.
Right, but they didn't, they could have not called it, is what I'm saying. Like, if it really was SEC bias, Georgia, they could have not called it, knowing that play could have given Georgia Tech the game. Had they scored, it would have been over. So I'm saying the SEC bias, I get it, but also at the same time, they had a chance to end the game and not give Georgia Tech a chance to have.
Georgia scored on. All right, but if you call the targeting correct, and you take Georgia's touchdown off the board, which they scored 3 plays after that, you're not even in overtime. The game's over. So, it's and I'm not even saying it's just SEC because of this game. Like, we all know about the SEC bias in general. It exists. It's real. My point is, in this game, if you watch that game, and again, none of us on this show have skin in that game. None of us. None of us.
I like Kane's game, but I could care less.
Agreed. I like him too. It's fine. But I'm saying, like, neither one of these teams are anybody's teams on this show. If you're watching that game unbiasedly, you can't tell me that the refereeing, especially in the second half, was not biased or skewed heavily towards Georgia. heavily towards Georgia. And that's not even getting into the fumble at the 2 where the kid stripped them and they just didn't have enough evidence to overturn. And that's fine. Like, that's how they had to call that. That
like
ball was
sitting,
out.
And he was clearly sitting on the defender's, like, arm.
Yeah.
So
that ball was out. On the ground. Like, that's 7 more points off the board for Georgia. Like, I think the thing, too, for me, again, and it's not even just the referees, but, like, bro, we've seen that fumble replay, and I'm at home. Like, we're all at home watching these replays, the same as what these announcers are, and not one time that they say, I wonder, are they going to look at this one for potential targeting? Like, that never once crossed their mind. And I know Joe and Jesse have seen this like hundreds of times. To even like just bring that up on the broadcast, like, I would have been like, all right, well, like, they said it, referees didn't look at it, it's a missed call, but like, the fact that we're just blatantly ignoring some of these things here is what my issue was with the game.
It wasn't your typical targeting, is I think what it was. It wasn't like, the receiver catches it, turns around, all of a sudden, boom, DB's head-to-head contact. Like, it was a scrum. There was a bunch of guys around. I don't think it was the typical targeting, play, which I think is probably why it wasn't looked at. Is it wasn't a typical play that targeting would happen in.
Which is why I understand why the refs didn't see it on the field. Right. However,
when they review
turnovers get reviewed, and Joe and Jesse were in the booth and they saw the replay hundreds of times, just like we all did, from the ABC broadcast there. And it didn't get brought up once, and I definitely have an issue with that because, even when the refs get the calls wrong on the field, the broadcasters are supposed to be, unbiased and give you their takes on things, and it didn't feel like that was the case there. It felt like every time Georgia got something big, it was excitement. It was just letting people know, hey, if Georgia can win this football game, they're going to the playoff. Like, and I got a like it feels like the SEC was just, hey. Joe, throw it in here that if Georgia wins, they go to SEC championship game. Hey, throw it in there that this is a good Georgia Tech team. They've beaten multiple top 10 ranked opponents, so far this year. Throw it in there that this is a good Georgia Tech team, and this rivalry is great, and it goes back a really long time, and anything can happen in these kinds of games. Like, it just didn't feel like impartial broadcast, and then seeing how the refs threw the flags as it got late. Like, we were saying in the group chat, like, when they were reviewing all these calls, it was like, oh, we know they're going to throw Georgia a bone here. We know that they won't call that there. Like, you seeing flags get picked up and, just questionable calls. Like, just as a whole, it just felt like I knew how that outcome was going to end. And I don't know if it was fully in the players' hands. That's all.
Agreed. All right, we got to get moving here. We're at 45 minutes to kick, so we got to roll.
Oh, look at that, number 1.
Yeah, that's one. That's at least 1 and 2 are just not debatable at this point.
True.
Let's start there. Honestly, Alex, I want your opinion on this before me and Cottrell jump in, because I know me and Cottrell are literally on the same exact page about this, and we went over it Wednesday. So I would like fresh eyes on your opinions of what you think is good, what's wrong, what's bad. What's insane?
Well, there's a couple things on here. I mean, obviously Tulane lost earlier this week.
They got smoked.
Again, we said last week though that Memphis was one of the favored teams to make the college football playoff at the beginning of the year. They were both 8-2 going in, or Memphis was 8-3 going into that game, or 7-3, whatever they were. So it was a great game. Memphis took care of business. No, I think I love seeing SMU in the top 10. Obviously, I've been huge on SMU all year. Bama being 13th, it really bothers me, though, is that they dropped them 5 spots, but they left them just enough room to get back in. All we need is one other team to falter, and they're going to be right back in the college football playoff mix. Same with Ole Miss. Like, I think Ole Miss is a team that I feel very strongly about at the beginning of the year. The fan part of me loves it. They're at 14. The commentator part of me is like, how the hell is this team at 14? So I think that's really kind of my issues with it is I don't have a problem with the top 12. Like, I do see, like, as of this point in the season, the top 12, I wouldn't have if the season ended today, I would not have a problem with the top 12 as it is right now, if I had an opinion.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with Alabama. Alabama being 13 is a joke. I think if South Carolina beats Clemson today, I think South Carolina is going to jump both Alabama and Ole Miss. I hope so anyway. I think they would have to. That pretty much ends the season for Alabama and Ole Miss, I would think. Depending on what happens, it's getting hard for me to not think if SMU loses to Miami in a conference championship game that they're not going to make this playoff. And I feel like that's what they're setting us up for right now. And I think that's a joke.
So Bill, quick question here. Obviously, you say if South Carolina beats Clemson today, you think or you hope that they would jump Ole Miss and Alabama. But earlier in the year, Alabama did beat South Carolina 27-25.
Losses matter.
Exactly. So that would bump Alabama to 12. South Carolina jumps Ole Miss.
How many losses does South Carolina have?
They both got 3.
Yeah,
3. Well, there you go. Even more of a reason.
Yeah. And they lost Ole Miss. And South Carolina lost Ole Miss also.
That's fine. And I'm not saying they should be in the playoff, but Alabama and Ole Miss should not be in the playoff either.
Agreed.
My thing is losses do matter. I think the time of the losses also matter. South Carolina hasn't lost a game since that Bama game, and they looked really impressive in that game. They had no business at that time, at least being in that football game. And I think if you're looking at it right now, you're telling me South Carolina hasn't lost since the beginning of October, and I've seen what Bama and Ole Miss have looked like the past couple weeks here, or just last week. I think if I'm looking at this, the top 12 teams right now, I think South Carolina would deserve to be ahead of Bama and Mississippi. And I think the thing is with that is that the committee has already shown you that the head-to-head matchups, they only matter sometimes. So I think you can get away with putting South Carolina ahead of Alabama and Ole Miss just because if you're going to go that route, we're trying to get the top 12 teams as it is right now. And if I'm looking at this Bama team, who it's not going to be one of the games that we go super in depth with, but I think Bama's going to struggle a bit today with Auburn. And I don't know. I know Ole Miss already played. They played Mississippi State. They struggled with them, last night. And 12-point win, but it was never a full dominating kind of game for a Mississippi State team who was awful this year and didn't win one game in the entire conference. So I think if South Carolina does take care of business against Clemson, it's going to make for an interesting argument. But I also think there's spots at the top there that are going to be fairly uncertain. I mean, A&M and Texas play each other today, which, we will go over that one. I think Notre Dame's in the spot where USC has been bad, but they could potentially lose that football game there. You talk about SMU playing either Miami or Clemson in the ACC championship game. I 100% think, the committee can say all they want to about conference championship, losses won't be as big of an impact. But I 100% think that if that SMU team is sitting at 9, like even if it's to number 6, Miami, I think there's a shot that they try to bump them out to just bring in an extra SEC team. So, I mean, I think that the way that these rankings are right now really intrigues me, but it also just gives me so much confusion when looking at, teams with very similar resumes like a Texas, Notre Dame, and Indiana.
There's just nothing you could say to me that if SMU loses a tight football game to the number 6 team in the country, that they're going to fall from 9 to out, that they would fall to 13 and Alabama would get in. There's nothing you could justify that for me for.
I agree.
Well, someone in that top 12 is not making it in because the Big 12 champion, no one's in that top 12. So someone's getting kicked out. So it's going to be a fight to see who gets stuck at that 12 spot.
Well, right now, Clemson is that team.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think what makes this really freaking interesting is that somehow, some way, if A&M can win today and they beat Georgia, you're going to be looking at Boise State as your 3 seed instead of the 4 seed. And I think that would really ruffle some things up there as well.
What's also interesting is what happens if Clemson beats South Carolina today? That's a 12 seed beating a 15 seed.
Well, then Alabama's season's
right. My issue is I'm assuming Clemson after that win would move up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would they jump SMU before the ACC championship game?
No.
And then at that point, if SMU loses, will SMU get left out? That's my concern.
No.
Clemson needs a loss like from SMU or Miami today to make it.
Yeah, it's true. But I mean, that being said, it's still not gonna. They're not gonna rank it that way though.
Mm-hmm.
So if Clemson does get a win against the 15th ranked team, I'll tell you who that hurts. That hurts Indiana. I don't know how. I mean, I don't see how Clemson would stay at 12 if they have a ranked win today. I could see them moving Boise up to 10, maybe Clemson to 11. I think that hurts Indiana tremendously if that's the way that game goes today.
I think Indiana, as long as they win, they are locked into the playoff. There's nothing you could tell me that one loss to the number 2 team in the country is better than Clemson losing, getting their doors blown off by Georgia at the beginning of the year, and then also losing the game to unranked Louisville. Like, I just don't see it.
Well,
they'd have one more ranked win than Indiana does.
See, I think the real issue is that because if Clemson wins today against South Carolina and SMU and Miami both win, I think that puts the loser of the ACC championship game at a huge disadvantage, because I think Clemson jumps up to that 8-9 spot with a win over South Carolina. And then you got Miami and SMU. There's no way they're putting 3 ACC teams in there. So I feel like this is going to be a situation where the loser of the ACC championship game is going to get punished for making that championship game.
But again,
that's why I look at it.
If you're moving Clemson up, though, again, like you can't tell me that they're passing SMU.
SMU plays Cal. SMU plays Cal today. They're both,
they're in the championship game though. Like,
correct. But what I'm saying is they're not going to. Okay, what are the odds of them letting 3 ACC teams into the club?
I agree with you. It's not going to happen, but you're legit. You're legit screwing someone then. Like,
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
You're going out of your way. You're going out of your way to kick one of them out on a non-ACC bias. Like, listen, I'm not saying Clemson's a top 12 team. They're not.
No,
I'm not saying they should be in. But if it boils down to that, so if you're telling me, again, if it ends up this way, 6 versus 9, you're telling me SMU wins that game, you're knocking Miami down from 6th down to 13th, and they're not getting in?
Well,
that's what I'm saying. Because if Clemson wins today,
no way.
No, but that's what I'm saying. There's no way they're letting 3 ACC teams in. If Clemson wins today, that's going to happen. So someone's going to get fucked, is what I'm saying.
Well, like you said, though, Alex, we really got to stop looking at it as a top 12 thing. It's really a top 11 thing, because your Big 12 champion's not listed right there. So right now, Clemson's on the outside looking in. So, I mean, they would definitely need some help. I mean, I think the one thing that you would really be looking at is, a best case scenario for a team like Clemson is that you'd want A&M to win today, and then you'd want Georgia to beat A&M in the SEC championship game, because at that point, A&M's not getting into the playoff, and then a loss today to Texas. I mean, I do think no matter what, Texas would still be in. Do I think it's deserve it? I don't. At that point, you're looking at a team whose only 2 ranked games they got, beat. I think you'd be looking at a Texas team kind of sideways. Like, maybe SMU deserves to be higher than them. Maybe Miami deserves to be higher than them. Like, I think Texas should be in that same spot as a team like where they looked at Indiana. So,
okay, that's I a gazillion % agree with you. Texas loses tonight. Where do you think they get slotted? They're going to go to 10.
9.
Indiana's going to get bumped. I don't think you can put them in front of SMU. I don't.
No, I'm saying I think everybody would move up. Indiana would get moved. I think everybody else would move up. Texas A&M would, well, not Texas A&M, but Texas would move to number 9. Indiana would be at 10, and everyone else is still going to be on the outside looking in.
So you're bumping Boise to 12 then, after they won and they're about to play in a championship
No,
game.
Boise would stay 11. Like, everything, like, you'd literally just move. Like, Penn State would go to 3. Notre Dame would go to 4. Like, everyone moves that way, and then Texas just slides down to 9. Everything else behind it would stay the same.
I think it's going to be interesting. I think I'm not saying Indiana doesn't get in, and I'm not going on any kind of rant or even being like a jerk, like joking around about it. I just think they're in a very precarious position in 10, depending on what happens.
Can we also talk about for just 1 second before we get into previews? I know we have a lot of games to preview and not much time left. It's not totally improbable to think that UNLV or Tulane makes it into this college football playoff yet, because if Boise State doesn't win their conference championship, they don't get in. And so UNLV, like I said, so like we're all being hypothetical now, but I think my favorite part about this part of the season is that there are still multiple teams vying for that non-Power 4 spot, and that's I think is the most exciting for me.
After Tulane's loss, though, I don't.
Well, they're still in the championship game. I don't know if they stay ranked or not. That's really the only, because Memphis is an 8-3 team. They're not like some 5-6 team. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they drop completely.
Tulane was 16.5-point favorite, and they got dog walked on their home field. That's gonna be
true.
That's gonna be a really tough sell to put them over Boise State if Boise State loses the conference championship game.
But it doesn't matter. Though. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter though. It wouldn't be Boise wouldn't have a spot in at that point because the automatic spot is the conference champion, like top 4 conference champion. So
could you imagine UNLV makes it to the college football playoff after their quarterback drama? Or earlier this year, they're bringing their backup QB and make
that'd be wild. Playoff. I mean, that's really where the question mark's going to be. Like, does UNLV getting that win over Boise jump them ahead of a Tulane?
Yeah. All right.
Also, what about Army?
Yeah,
Army would also be in the mix as well. Not saying they should after all we saw, but
I think today either goes as planned for the most part, or I think it's nutty. I always have this weird thing where, like, everybody was watching that Georgia Tech game last night, and then you get all these teams come out the next day and we're like, all right, like, we can't beat Georgia. Like, we got to be dialed in, and everybody gets super focused. Or it's one of those things where it's contagious. Like, everybody watches it last night and they all get nervous and pucker up, and then you get all kinds of upsets today. I feel like it's always one way or the other. It's a weird thing I've noticed over the course of the year. So it'll be it's gonna be fun. I mean, there's a lot of crazy games today that we're gonna get into in a second here. We're gonna run through these because this is the only one that's really gonna take any kind of time is the Big 12. So ACC is very straightforward. So like we said, SMU is already in no matter what happens today. Miami, if they beat Syracuse on the road today, they are in. It's very cut and dry. Clemson has to beat South Carolina.
And then they don't need to win. If Miami loses, then they're in.
Yeah, because it's not a conference game.
Oh, true. You're right. So, yeah, Clemson, either way, Miami wins, they're in. If not, Clemson goes. SMU is locked in. Big Ten, Oregon is locked in. Ohio State, if they win today against Michigan, they are in. If they lose, Penn State goes. If they win, if Ohio State and Penn State both lose and Indiana wins, Indiana goes.
That'd be crazy. That'd be crazy, though. Michigan beats Ohio State. Who does Penn State play today? They play Maryland.
I think.
I mean, that'd be a wild end of the season.
Yeah. Watch another 30-point Indiana loss. It'll be great. SEC, which we've already talked about a couple times. Texas plays A&M tonight at Kyle Field. Winner of that plays Georgia, who's locked in. Big 12 is you have to work at NASA to figure it out. I think the only one, Colorado, is done. They're in the clubhouse at 6-2. Or is that updated? They got to be 7-2.
No, yeah, they're 7-2. They're not done yet. They're still in the race.
No, I'm saying they're done, like their season's done. Is what I'm saying. Like
yes. I made the slide before last night's game.
Yeah, that's fine. They're 9-3, 7-2. Arizona State, I believe, is the only one that if they win, I think they're guaranteed to get in. I think if Arizona State and BYU both win, I think a bunch of crazy stuff has to happen for us not to get that rematch. Is kind of how I believe. If BYU and Arizona State both lose, then I think Iowa State has the inside track to get in.
Colorado would be in also at that point.
I think I agree. So I think you get if BYU and Arizona State both lose, I think in
Colorado and
Iowa State wins today, that is your championship. Correct. I believe it's Colorado, Iowa State. Then Baylor can still get in. Kansas State can still get in,
which is wild.
It is wild. Some of these teams play each other, so some of it's going to take care of itself, obviously. But we will probably not know till later tonight who's getting in. The most likely outcome you're getting is a rematch between BYU and Arizona State. But when I say most likely, I'm not saying that's like 75% chance to happen because it's nowhere close to that. It's probably like 40. It's one of those things, if we listed every single scenario, that would win, but there's only like a 4 out of 10 chance that happens. So BYU is home, I believe.
If all four of those 2-loss teams win today, it's a Arizona State, Iowa State championship game, just like you said. Yeah, Iowa State making it in Arizona State. That'd be the wildest, most wild Big 12 championship game. I don't think anybody had Arizona State. Anybody had Iowa State. That'd be wild.
How does Iowa State jump BYU though?
Because they have the inside track, like as far as like all the tiebreakers go. But Arizona State and Iowa State are literally the only two teams that control their destiny here. I'll get it up here in just give me 1 second.
I had it earlier and I started reading it, and I was like, it's making my head hurt.
All right, so
there's so many
go.
different scenarios.
Head-to-head record. So they didn't. I guess those two didn't play each other.
No,
they did not.
Win percentage against all common conference. Yeah, see, this is where it gets like you have to have all the data for this to even look at it. Record versus common opponents standings. Jesus Christ.
Basically, in a non-crazy world here is with Colorado winning yesterday, things really got simplified a bit, I guess you could say. BYU, it's going to be a combination of, as long as all three of these teams don't lose, it's going to be a combination of BYU, Colorado, Arizona State, or Iowa State. Like
Iowa State's got the hardest game too.
You only get into the nutty stuff if three of those teams, like all three of those teams, lose.
Right.
If two of them lose, it's going to be Colorado. If two of them lose, it's going to be Colorado, and whoever didn't lose. If one of them lose, it's going to be, either depending on who it is, it's going to be Arizona State, BYU, or Iowa State in that game. And then if none of them lose, we're going to be looking at Arizona State and Iowa State. So that's like the easiest way to kind of simplify it there. It only really turns into true chaos if BYU, Arizona State, and Iowa State all lose today.
Here's the real question. Do any of those top four teams that we're really talking about right now, BYU, Colorado, Arizona State, and Iowa State, do any of those four teams have a chance of really competing in the college football playoff, you think? Like really being a competitor?
I say no, but it also depends on who they face. Like I do think if they as good as Boise State has looked this year, if they get a Boise State in that first round, or even, Bill, this is going to give you some credit here. Even a team like Indiana, they get Indiana, I think they'll be able to compete there. I think Indiana is good enough to beat anybody in the Big 12, but I also think they'd be able to get, like the Big 12 schools, be able to compete with Indiana, SMU, Notre Dame. Like I just think we're in a spot right now in college football where if you're not really in that top 5, you're beatable, in my opinion. So I think you could see chaos happen.
I would say, looking at it on paper, Arizona State and Arizona is tricky. But I think if they play well, I think they win. BYU against Houston at home. BYU is a heavy favorite. Iowa State's got the hardest game by far. They're hosting Kansas State. A lot of people are picking Kansas State to win that game.
Absolutely.
So that is a 7:30 kick. Ooh, that could be interesting.
And I'm picking Kansas to beat Baylor as well, which is obviously Baylor's not in the top 4, but like there's a chance for Baylor to still make this thing. So I'm loving all these games: Baylor, Kansas, Texas Tech, West Virginia. There's a lot of these games that are still going to determine some stuff.
Kansas just did something that nobody's ever done before, being a team under 500 and beat 3 ranked teams in a row. It's never been done before.
This is the Kansas I was expecting to see at the beginning of the year. Like that's what sucks. Is this is
the thing it all was.
This is the Kansas that I picked to go to the damn Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, they're playing out of their minds. This is the best they've played, obviously, all year, as they've won 3 ranked games in a row. And I'm picking them today to beat Baylor. They're on a roll right now. They need this win to become bowl eligible.
Yeah,
it's pretty easy for me.
I will say this: BYU could have a lot of pressure on them when they kick off at 10:15. Because everybody else is going to be done. Arizona State, Arizona got picked up by Fox at 3:30.
I can't wait for that game.
That Kansas State, Iowa State game also got picked up by Fox. That's at 7:30. So if Kansas State beats Iowa State, BYU will know at 10:15 what they have to do. So
if they even can do anything.
If they have a shot, true. So that could be, if you're betting that game, be very aware. Because if I don't think they pull starters or anything like that, but you're still, again, they're kids. You could have a huge emotional letdown knowing you're walking on that field and you're not playing for anything. So, but we got to go to we got to get going here on previews. Some of these we can kind of get through quick, but we got to get through them because we still got to get to pick them.
I'd say, honestly, I feel like all the games that aren't like it's essentially critical to the college football playoff, I feel like we could just pick our winner and move on.
So this is what we're gonna do. I'm gonna kind of cherry pick and go through these real quick. Some of the games we don't have to talk about. Alex, we're gonna start Oregon at Washington. You guys are home, I believe. Correct?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. So Washington at Oregon. Oregon shows up. They win this football game. I don't think they're getting any kind of pushback here. I think they win by probably 2 scores at least. I'll say like 31-17. They'll be locked into one. They'll be the top. They'll be the home team for the Big Ten championship game next week. I don't know. Do you guys have anything different on that?
I mean, it's still a rivalry game. I mean, we still can't take it lightly. Still the last game of the year. Washington is bowl eligible, which makes me a little more relaxed. Just playing a team that's up against bowl eligibility is not a spot you want to be in. And we're playing the best quarterback named Will in the Big Ten. So that's a little bit of a worry as well. But no, I think Oregon takes care of business. I think it's a 3-touchdown game. Oregon, like it's been saying all day today, all gas, no break. I think today it's going to be all gas for the Oregon Ducks. And I think they're going to win pretty handedly. I'm thinking it's going to be like a 38-15 type game, 38-16 type game.
It is still November. Oregon still knows how to play football. They win today, take care of business. Come December, we're talking a different story. So I'm rolling with the Ducks. I think they win big here against a Washington team that, they're bowl eligible. Yay, that's great and things like that, but not a serious threat to take care of the Ducks this week.
All right, let's hop over to probably the least meaningful and probably hyped up Iron Bowl that I can remember in a long time. Auburn, for the most part, has been terrible this year. Alabama, like we already talked about, outside looking in the college football playoff. I don't think this game moves the needle for them. I think this game is closer than it probably normally should be, or on paper you think it would be. I'll go Alabama 27, Auburn 21.
I got Auburn pulling the upset here.
Even better.
I think this is an Auburn team with really nothing to lose at this point. They're already bowl eligible. I believe they're 7-5 or 7-6.
Auburn is 5-6.
They're 5-6. Okay, I thought they were 6-5. But even better. I mean, I think this is you're playing for a bowl game here. You look at this Alabama team who, look at it from last week. I think this is a team that really hasn't had a true identity since, the beginning of the year. And I think in an Iron Bowl, this being the Boers' first Iron Bowl at that, I think Auburn's gonna shock a lot of people here. Let's not forget this is an Auburn team who really should have won the game last year. We were in Isaiah Bond touchdown from 4th and 29 or 31, whatever it was, from Auburn actually winning that football game how they were supposed to. So with that said, I think Auburn's going to take care of business this week. Auburn's been playing good football as of late. And I think this will finally put the nail in the Bama coffin.
Yeah, I mean, Auburn, they should be bowl eligible. They had a tough stretch in September and early October where they had Oklahoma, Georgia, and a ranked Missouri, 3 weeks in a row. They lost 4 in a row during that stretch, also losing to Arkansas at home. And there's just something different about a rivalry game. Like I said, I've talked about this. All gas, no breaks, bowl eligibility. These are key factors for today's episode. And that, like I said, Auburn has nothing to lose. Like, literally have everything to gain in this game. They're going to leave it all on the field. Alabama is literally has to win and has to win handedly to kind of make their case to get bumped up a spot and make their chance and make their claim in the college football playoff. Well, Auburn's just trying to make a bowl game, and they want to do what they can to eliminate Alabama's chances to make that college football playoff. So I think this game is going to be back and forth. 10.5 points in this game as a spread is absolutely insane. I do think Alabama wins this, but I do think it's a 3-point game. I think it's a low-scoring game. I think we're looking at 21-18, and I even think Auburn has a chance to tie the game, but it misses a field goal in the second half. That's how close I think this game is going to be, and I think it's going to be an Iron Bowl for the ages. But I do think Alabama pulls it out.
All right, let's hop out west. Number 5 Notre Dame at USC. USC started the year off, kind of thought we missed on them, and then they kind of turned back into what we thought they were going to be. Went through a quarterback change. Notre Dame, like we talked about earlier, kind of rolling, kind of under the radar, not playing top-notch teams, but kind of really just throttling people and taking care of business. Only a 7.5-point spread. It's always a tricky trip out to Southern California. That being said, I think Notre Dame takes care of business today. I think it's a lower scoring game than most people would think. I'll go Notre Dame 21, USC 17.
I think Notre Dame wins a tighter game. I'm with you. I do think the lower scoring part of it happens there, but with Notre Dame knowing that this is all they need essentially to go to the college football playoff, I think they take care of business. I'd go somewhere like 27-16, something random score. But I think Notre Dame takes care of business in this one.
Yeah, so Jaden Maeva has looked great in his first 2 starts, going 2-0 against Nebraska and UCLA. Both of them one possession games. But this is by far going to be the best defense that Jaden has seen in his young career. I think he's going to be a fantastic quarterback, but I think Notre Dame's defense is going to be able to get to him today. I think it's going to force him to throw some interceptions, force him to some double coverages, and I think that they're going to be able to get some penetration on the front. And then Notre Dame is going to be able to control the line of scrimmage and control the time of possession by running the ball. Riley Leonard has looked efficient the last few weeks, and I think that Notre Dame is in the right spot to kind of finish off their season on the right note. And I think that, like I said, Jaden Maeva is going to learn today, have a learning curve. I think next year he's going to be a fantastic quarterback, but this being the best defense he's faced in his young career, I think Notre Dame takes care of business. I think it's probably a 2-possession game. I do think it's low scoring, but I think it's like a 28-10, 28-14 type situation. Notre Dame.
All right, let's hop right up there. Clemson, number 12 Clemson versus number 15 South Carolina. Rivalry game, in-state game, obviously. Not really anything on the line for South Carolina. Definitely skinning the game for Clemson. Clemson needs to win, and they don't need to win. They just need Miami to lose. But going back and
need to win too.
This is
they wouldn't. You're right.
Not an ACC game. So yeah. I've gone back and forth with this. I just somehow for some reason think Clemson pulls the game out, but I wouldn't be shocked if South Carolina went into Death Valley and won either. They are probably one of the hottest teams in college football right now. Beat a really good Texas A&M team I think 2 weeks ago. Couple ranked wins here in the streak. Like Cottrell said, they haven't lost since their earlier loss in this. I think they won 5 or 6 in a row now. 5. I'm gonna go Clemson like 34-31. I'm probably wrong on this. I don't know why. I think I'm just giving Clemson too much benefit of the doubt. But South Carolina's on fire right now. This should be a good football game.
Agreed. I think it'll be a good football game, but I'm rolling with South Carolina here. I think South Carolina is the better football team, and I think they're better where it counts, and that's in the trenches. I think I said it on Wire to Wire on Wednesday. South Carolina has, in my opinion, the best defensive line in all of college football, and that's including your Ohio States, your Michigan, your Oregons, your everybody. I think with what they're able to do with their ends, specifically in Kyle Kennard and Dylan Stewart, is going to be important in this game, and be important in making Cade Klubnik very uncomfortable back there. So I'm rolling with South Carolina in this one and get it done. This is a game that gets played on neutral field down in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I think this will be a fun one. You get a lot of people to come out for, but ultimately I'm rolling with the Gamecocks in this one.
Yeah, I mean, South Carolina, after that loss to Alabama, they really turned to Sellers, and Sellers kind of asked him to open up that offense a little more. And he was really a fantastic the last half of the season, especially during this 5-game win streak. He's thrown for almost 2,000 yards in those 5 games. And Clemson is I just can't trust Clemson. They're too inconsistent. They have too many holes in there, on the defensive side of the ball. And like I said, South Carolina winning 5 in a row. The only losses this season are to 3 ranked teams. Obviously, LSU. Early in the year, LSU was a much different team than they are now, and they were playing great football. They were 16th ranked at that time. Ole Miss and Bama are their 3 losses. The South Carolina still has something to play for today, as if Alabama and Ole Miss and they beat Clemson, that does actually help South Carolina get into that 12th college football playoff spot. So this is actually a huge game for them. I think they're going to continue that train that they're on. I think they're going to win. I don't think this game is actually close. I think it's going to be more like a 35-21. Okay, I guess this 2-possession game is pretty close, but 35-21. South Carolina's going to take care of business. I think it's going to be pretty handily.
All right, let's go to the Big Two or SEC. Sorry, winner goes to the SEC championship game and play Georgia. Number 3, Texas. Number 20, Texas A&M. Marcel Reed is going to start at quarterback for A&M. He's kind of been electric since they've given him the job and the spurts that he's played in before that with Connor and Wigman behind him. Kind of a same kind of DJ Lagaway type of impact for A&M on their offense since he's been playing. Reports are as of right now that Quinn Ewers is going to start. He's got a bad ankle sprain. Apparently they're going to shoot him up, tape it, going to get him through. He's going to try to start and at least play and see where it goes from there. I think that matters. I don't know why you just wouldn't. If you believe in Arch, I don't know why you wouldn't go to a healthy Arch. Then again, I don't know how limited or how immobile Quinn Ewers is going to be. But the fact that it's almost a game time decision, and they're pretty much putting it out there that he's going to try to play through it, leads me to believe that it's a pretty significant injury. He went for MRIs this week, so they thought enough of it to go through that whole the whole charade with it. I think A&M upsets Texas at home. I think they're going to get it done in front of that crowd. That environment is going to be crazy tonight. I'm actually kind of looking forward to watching this game later this evening. I think A&M gets it done. I think this is the first block in the chaos to fall today.
I think the difference between these two teams today is that Texas is in win or loss. At the 3 seed, they're not going to drop 10 spots to be knocked out of the college football playoff, win or lose. And Texas A&M is playing for their college football playoff life today. The only chance they have to make that college football playoff is by winning the SEC championship game. So they're going to be putting it all on the line today. And just like you said, Bill, Quinn Ewers, I don't know how I feel about playing him with a high ankle sprain. That is not an injury that allows you to be mobile. Part of Quinn Ewers' game is being able to make things happen when it's unscheduled, getting out of the pocket, rolling out to the right, to the left, rushing for 5 yards for a first down on that 3rd and 5 when all your receivers are covered. Without that ability, I don't know how Texas can. Like I said, they haven't been running the ball great. I love Quinn Ewers, but I think Arch Manning has got to be the move today. I mean, you literally have nothing to lose. You lose this game, you're still in the college football playoff. You get an extra week of rest. Why not rest Quinn Ewers, put Arch Manning in a big game situation, and see how it goes? But again, I'm not the coach, and I'm not getting paid the big bucks. A&M, I think, handles it pretty heavily, and I'm pretty sure we are going to see Arch Manning in this game, but I think it's going to be the second half, and I think it's going to be too little, too late.
So the committee told me last year that when your starting quarterback gets hurt late in the season, and it matters how you look to end the year. So if hypothetically here, if A&M goes into this game with Texas and Quinn Ewers, and they not only just win, but they look rather dominant because Quinn is hurt, that means that Texas should drop out of the college football playoff completely, right? At that point, they'd have 2 losses. Their quarterback would be hurt. Like at that point, they don't have a ranked win on their entire schedule. What has Texas done to make the college football playoff? Like that would be my question. You told me last year Florida State wasn't good enough when Jordan Travis got hurt, and they actually won their final couple games, and they won their conference as well, and they weren't able to make it in. So with Quinn being hurt here, you lose into your second-ranked team, and depending on how it looks, why is that Texas is an automatic into the playoff? Look at their resume. I've been saying it for the last 3 weeks. They are no different than Indiana right now.
They have 3 ranked wins. Texas has 3 ranked wins. There's 12 teams, not 4, and they have a solid backup who already has won games this year.
Who are their 3 ranked wins?
Obviously, Michigan at the time was ranked. Oklahoma, Vanderbilt.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm just saying on the schedule there is ranked wins.
Yeah.
So you can't tell me they don't have ranked wins because they do.
because Michigan's not ranked, Vanderbilt's not ranked, and neither is Oklahoma.
So you're telling me that Texas at the 3 seed, if they lose today, they are going to drop all the way out of the college football playoff?
I'm not saying they are because they're in the SEC and they're number 3 right now, but I'm telling you that it should very much be a discussion when you're talking about Michigan, Oklahoma, and who's the other? Vanderbilt as your 3 best wins on the year. Yeah, okay. I'm buying it. Sure.
SEC schedule at 6-2. Like, I mean,
bro, I'm so tired of this SEC schedule. Like, literally, Michigan. Indiana faced Michigan. Vanderbilt's no different than Nebraska. Oklahoma's you could name any of the middle of the pack team in the Big Ten. Oklahoma is Maryland. They're Rutgers. Like they are. Yeah,
Oklahoma's Michigan State. That's what they are.
They are anybody you want to name in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten. So Texas got the Texas, light SEC schedule, and the only 2 serious opponents they had was Georgia, who they got blown out by at home. And depending on how they look in this game, I'm saying that their conversation should be had. It won't, but the conversation should be had when your 3 best wins of the year are Michigan, Vanderbilt, and Oklahoma. Like,
let's put it this way: when rankings matter at the end of the year, the 2 teams they play that were ranked would be A&M and Georgia, and they lost to both of them.
They're still one of the best 12 teams in the country, so I don't know why we're talking about this.
We're
wasting the last 10 minutes of our show on a hypothetical that's not going to happen.
We'll see. If they lose tonight, I don't think there's a guarantee they host a game.
The lowest they drop is 8. That's the lowest they drop if they lose tonight.
Indiana should be ahead of them if they lose tonight.
I'm not going to argue that, but I'm saying they're not dropping even to double digits if they lose tonight, unless they get blown out 77-0. And Quinn Ewers is knocked out, and Arch Manning looks like shit. That's the only way. Like,
I'll say they don't have the resume to put them in front of any other 1-loss team.
They have the resume to be the number 3 team in the country, though. And Penn State arguably has a tougher schedule and a better 1 loss. And they're still ahead of them. So I don't agree with
you. Here's what you have to remember. Penn State is not going to finish in the top 4. Like, they're automatically going to get bumped down. So again, there's going to be a huge reshuffle that last week because Penn State can't finish in the top 4. Notre Dame, depending on what happens today, could end up being 3 or 4. But they can't finish there. They can't finish any higher than 5. So some of these teams are going to get pushed down because they can't without being conference champions. They can't finish certain places. I'll tell you this right now: Texas goes on the road the first week and they don't host. Don't be surprised if they lose. I agree with Cottrell. There's just no proof in the pudding for me. Like there's no what is their best win?
Vandy.
So they beat Vanderbilt. They can be a national champion. I'm not buying that. I love Quinn Ewers, but again, if you take the horns off the helmet and just put a blind resume up, you would look at that team with no ranked wins and their best win being a 500 Big Ten school or Vanderbilt, however you want to slice it. If you didn't know who it was, you wouldn't pick that team to be a national championship contender. That's all I'm saying.
Well, if they told me that same team was 10th in points scored and 3rd in defensive points allowed, I would say yes. I would.
Welcome sounds like Indiana. Correct. It sounds like Indiana.
And I said Indiana should be in. So I'm very consistent across the board.
Yeah. I'm fine with that. I'm just saying I think, and I've been consistent with this as well. I'm just saying Tennessee and Indiana are different shits in the same pot, in my opinion.
Agreed. It's a great way to put it.
All right, guys, we're getting up on time. I need action between you guys and Ohio State.
It's not going to be a lot. It's not going to be what you want. This isn't
Bill. There better be action.
We got to hop out west real quick and do these 2 games. Then we get into
no,
it.
we don't.
Oh my gosh, no, we
Arizona
don't.
Arizona State, Kansas State.
I'm picking that game anyway, so it doesn't matter.
All right, then we'll go to the game. Unranked Michigan, who is apparently everybody's goddamn resume booster for these FS teams, versus number 2, Ohio State, in the horseshoe. There's really nothing on the line. There is for you guys, I guess. You have to win to get in. But Ohio State, in my opinion, is one of the 2 or 3 elite teams in the country. Michigan, no quarterback this year, just absolutely screwed us. I think the defense will play well for a while. They can only play bend but don't break for so long. Will Johnson not suiting up today really, really disappoints me. I don't have time to go into it, but it's a chicken shit move, and I'll say it. And I love Will Johnson. There's not a bigger Will Johnson fan than myself, but not playing the last 4 games of the year, oh boy. And for being a toe injury, wearing that number 2, knowing it means something at that school. There's just certain numbers at certain schools that matter. Number 2 is one of them. And you look at the last, 2 or 3 guys that have worn it and what they meant to that program and being tough, and Charles Woodson, Blake Corum. It's just very disappointing to me. It's a very me situation. Unless he had surgery on his toe and something like that comes out, skipping this game for a toe injury is inexcusable to me. That being said, what's going to happen on the field today? Ohio State's offense eventually is just going to do its thing. It's going to wear down Michigan's defense eventually, unless Michigan comes out with some offensive game plan and can keep Ohio State off the field and not let their defense get worn down. I just feel like the inevitable is eventually going to happen here. I think it's closer. I don't think Ohio State covers. That'll be part of my pick 'em here in a little while, but I think Ohio State just has too much offensively. They're efficient. They're going to make plays eventually. I just think they're too much. I'll say 34-21 Ohio State.
Well, I think this game gets ugly. I think this is you get a get back game from the past 3 years, and I think you had, I believe it was 12 seniors come back that could have won the NFL last year that would have most likely gotten drafted. They came back for this. They came back to beat Michigan because that senior class does not have a pair of gold pants, and they came back to ultimately try and compete for a national championship. I would like to see Ryan Day come out with an edge in this one, and I'd like him to see him go for 2 when he's already up 3 or 4 possessions in this one. That's the kind of hate I want Ryan Day to bring back out here. Ultimately, here for me, I'm rolling with Ohio State big in this one. I'm going 51-13 in an absolute blowout.
To some degree, I hope it happens because I hope Ryan Day does all the petty shit. I do. I really do, because I also believe Sharon Moore has that in him, and he'll give it back to him next year. I know Ryan Day, and I know Ryan Day
material,
and I know Ryan Day doesn't handle it and can't handle it. So I'm all for the petty being involved in this rivalry. So if he gives it out today, that's great. Just know there will come a day, probably sooner than later, that we'll have the opportunity to do the same. And I just do not want to hear Ryan Day crying about it after the game. That's all I'm going to say.
I got one thing to say about this game. Special teams, special teams, special teams. Michigan wants to have a chance of keeping this game close or winning this game. They have to win on special teams side of the ball. Penn State, Ohio State has started slow the last couple of weeks. Cottrell, you can't even argue that. They've had a rough start to games the last couple of weeks. If Michigan wants to have a chance to win this game, they have to score early on the first possession, and they have to get a turnover somewhere on special teams and get short field to make this a game. I do think Ohio State, unfortunately, is going to take care of business. I do think Michigan is going to keep this close, though. And this is part of my pick 'em. I won't give too much, but Michigan's got to win on special teams side of the ball to have a chance to win this game.
All right. Let's go and pick them quick. I will go super fast because one of my games is already over. I had Georgia Tech plus 19.5. That's a win. I got Syracuse plus 10.5 against Miami at home. I think Miami sneaks out with the win, but I think Syracuse, calm accord. I think they play well at home. They keep the game close. Tennessee at Vanderbilt. I'm taking Vanderbilt again, plus 10.5. We've already seen them do it. They are not going to be intimidated by Tennessee coming into that building today whatsoever. Give me Vanderbilt plus 10.5. Superdog just said Michigan plus 20.5 against Ohio State. I fully expect Ohio State to win, but I think Michigan keeps it close enough that it's respectable.
Yeah, so for me this week, I got Vandy just like Bill, plus 10.5 at home versus Tennessee for a lot of the same reasons. I think Vanderbilt's going to be a true live dog in this one to potentially win the game outright. So if you give me 10.5, I like them at that odd. Team that we kind of alluded to a little bit earlier. I love Kansas. I got them minus 1.5 at Baylor. They've been one of the hottest teams there in the Big 12, and I think they continue to keep that rolling. And the last game is one that we already talked about as well. I like South Carolina outright. So if you give them to me at plus 2.5 and the neutral site versus Clemson, I'm going to take them just because I don't trust that Clemson team at all. And then the last one already hit for me. My super dog for this week was Georgia Tech. They were at plus 19.5, and we saw that game ultimately come down to 2 points. So definitely got a chance to pick up some big time super dog points in that one.
All right, so we'll go quick as well. First pick, I'm doing South Carolina. I had it at plus 3. If it's down to 2.5 now, I'll still take it at 2.5. South Carolina takes care of business at Clemson. The next game, I think Arizona State's going to make that Big 12 championship, but Arizona needs this win to make a bowl, so I think this game is going to be close. Arizona at plus 9 against Arizona State. It's a rivalry game. Like I said, Arizona has a chance to play spoilers, so this is, I think, for me, the lock of the day is Arizona plus 9 against Arizona State. And then I want Miami to win because I picked SMU Miami in the ACC championship game, and I would love for that to happen. And I do think that's going to happen, but Syracuse and Kyle McCord, they're either going to get blown out by 50 or they're going to score 50 and keep it within, keep it within 2 or 3 points. So I think Syracuse at plus 11 is absolutely insane. That's why I'm picking Syracuse plus 11 against Miami. Miami has not played well. They play a lot of close games they shouldn't. So I think Syracuse will be able to keep it close. And then for Superdog, I'm gonna jump on the Bills' coattails over here. Michigan at plus 19.5 is what I saw this morning against Ohio State. Again, this is rivalry week, baby. Like, these kids have been looking all year to this game. This is Michigan's national championship game. If they beat Ohio State and they finish 7-5, it's not going to be a wasted year for Michigan fans or that Michigan football team. They know how big of a win today would be. So I'm picking Michigan plus 19.5 against Ohio State.
All right, we got some Mountain here. And
what the heck did you add in there? I'm going to cut you. I'm going to cut you, fool. I'm going to cut you. I do the graphics. How dare you?
Yeah, I had to add in my own Ohio State flair here, and
you didn't have to do nothing.
If you know the meme here, this is the guy who showed up to his enemy's funeral just to make sure they were dead. So that's Ohio State going to the graveyard, just making sure Michigan's down there, buried deep in the dirt here.
Bill, I didn't do that. I did not do that. I did not condone it.
It's all right. You know what the best part about this is? He's going to look and be like, oh, they look kind of dead, but there's always next year. Death in college football is temporary. So
we'll punch through the grave.
Yep. Well, he's going to turn his back and walk away to the parking lot like he's going to his car, and the hand's going to come out. We'll be back next year. Don't worry.
Hey, and no matter what, he's still looking up at Oregon, so it's cool.
For another week. And only 7. They got 7 days before that's over.
But, man, look at the horse race in the Big 12, though. We got Tech, Iowa State, Kansas State, BYU, Colorado, and Arizona State all with viable chances today. Alabama, BYU, A&M, and Colorado all on life support right now. And A&M and Texas battling to see who goes to the SEC championship game, baby. It is a beautiful day for college football. I'm glad that we get to enjoy it today.
Agreed. Well, we pretty much got done on time. Kickoff didn't happen yet. We're about 5 minutes out, so. Listen, real quick. Next week is going to be fun because obviously we're going to have all the conference championship games. We'll have all the big ones. We're going to spend a lot more time on the rankings, obviously, and actually this little graphic right here because a lot of this is going to change. So it's going to be a hell of a day for college football. It is day after 2 days after Thanksgiving. A lot of rubber where the rubber meets the road games today. So it's going to be exciting. I hope everybody enjoys it. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I went over through all this on Wednesday, but obviously I'm super thankful for these two guys on screen with me right now. We decided to do this last year finally and put it together pretty quick, and it's become a really, really awesome thing that we get to do every Saturday. Talking about, I know for myself and Cottrell, pretty much our biggest passion as in college football, and having Alex have a completely different, unique point of view and coming from the West Coast, and obviously Oregon joined the Big Ten this year. It's just everything's been awesome. So I'm extremely grateful for these two guys, and they make my life very easy and very joyful with this podcast. So I'm thankful for both of you. So thank you for everything both of you guys do. And I enjoy the hell out of being on here with both of you guys every Saturday.
Hey, feelings mutual. I promise you that. I don't get up at 6:30 just every morning just for anybody. Okay, only for you guys.
Appreciate it for sure. But don't want to keep you guys much longer here because it's time.
It is time. I do want to thank all the people that listen. Obviously every week, Justin Louder, the dude, same as Alex wakes up early to do the show. Justin Louder gets up every Saturday to listen to the show. We can't continue to grow and get better without people like that. So, thank you to Justin and all the people who listen, all the people that download the show. We're just going to keep trying to get better and keep enjoying the hell out of the show. So, with that being said, it is time to go. I wish everybody good luck except for Cottrell, but I don't think he's going to need it today. I think my guys do. And we will be back next week for Conference Championship Week. Anything else, gentlemen?
I got nothing.
All right.
Nope. Dubs down, baby. Beating Washington today.
All right. See you, boys.
Later.